Your brain removes your ability to choose before panic feels intense. Panic does not begin as emotion. It begins as compression, under extreme stress. The brain does not accelerate decision-making by becoming more efficient. It accelerates by removing alternatives. What remains feels urgent, singular, and necessary. Choice disappears quietly, replaced by a forced trajectory. The trigger is cumulative load. Fatigue lowers the brain's tolerance for uncertainty. Stress elevates the cost of delay. When these conditions converge, the brain interprets hesitation as danger. The fastest way to reduce internal pressure is not accuracy, it is action, any action. At this point, neural priority shifts. Systems responsible for comparison, simulation, and error prediction lose influence. They require time and energy the brain no longer believes it can afford. Authority transfers to circuits optimized for rapid execution, not evaluation. This transfer happens before panic is consciously recognized. The subjective experience is misleading. The individual does not feel confused, they feel focused. The narrowing of options is experienced as clarity. The brain presents the remaining option as obvious, even inevitable. This is not insight, it is constraint. Context is the first casualty. Memory. Retrieval becomes shallow and selective. Only fragments that support immediate action are accessed. Contradictory information is filtered out. The brain is no longer asking what is happening. It is asking how to end the sensation of urgency. This is why panic consistently selects the wrong option. It does not assess correctness. It assesses speed. The action chosen is the one that promises the fastest reduction in internal tension, not the best alignment with the environment. This is where the system stops recalibrating. Once the decision pathway collapses into a single option, correction becomes unlikely. Feedback that would normally trigger reassessment arrives too late or is ignored. The brain interprets resistance not as error, but as confirmation that the action must be intensified. Fatigue amplifies this effect. An exhausted brain has fewer reserves to challenge its own impulses. The threshold for reconsideration rises. Reversing course feels costly, even dangerous. Persistence is favored over adjustment. Emotion follows function. Fear is not amplified to signal danger. It is simplified to fuel motion. Panic feels urgent because urgency sustains movement. Calm would slow the system down, and slowing down is interpreted as failure. The critical detail is that panic does not remove intelligence. It removes optionality. The brain remains capable of action, but no longer capable of choice. What feels like decisiveness is actually exclusion. By the time panic is consciously labeled, the decision has already been made. The brain is executing, not evaluating. The option selected feels right because it is the only one left. As panic persists, the brain reinforces this narrowed state. The single chosen option becomes anchored, not because it is effective, but because abandoning it would require reopening uncertainty. Under extreme stress, uncertainty is treated as an unsustainable load. Neural feedback loops tighten. Signals that support the ongoing action are amplified. Signals that question it are suppressed. This is not stubbornness. It is energetic triage. Reevaluation consumes resources the brain no longer allocates. Persistence is cheaper than reconsideration. Physiologically, this is reflected in the autonomic shift. Sympathetic dominance increases. Heart rate rises. Breathing becomes shallow and rapid. These changes are not meant to improve thinking. They are meant to sustain output. The body is preparing to act repeatedly, not to reassess. Cognitive timing degrades. The gap between perception and action shortens. There is less delay for interpretation. Stimuli trigger response before they are fully processed. This creates the impression of decisiveness while eliminating accuracy. The brain is no longer sampling the environment. It is reacting to fragments of it. This leads to a specific error pattern. When the initial action fails to resolve the situation, escalation replaces adaptation. The brain increases intensity instead of changing strategy. Louder, faster, harder. Each escalation further reduces the possibility of correction. The system doubles down because doubling down is the only remaining variable. This is the second, irreversible shift. From this point on, Panic no longer signals danger. It becomes the decision framework. Fatigue accelerates this collapse. An exhausted brain cannot sustain parallel processing. It cannot hold competing options in working memory. The effort required to imagine an alternative exceeds available capacity. The current action persists by default. The sense of urgency intensifies, but situational awareness shrinks. Peripheral details disappear. Time perception distorts. The future compresses into seconds. Long-term consequences are not ignored intentionally. They are no longer represented. The individual may feel increasingly locked in. This is not emotional overwhelm. It is cognitive foreclosure. The brain has closed the option, space to protect itself from overload. What remains is motion without navigation. At this stage, even stopping can feel wrong. Pausing would reintroduce uncertainty. The brain equates stopping with exposure. Movement, even ineffective movement, feels safer than stillness. Panic does not choose the wrong option because it is irrational. It chooses the wrong option because it is operating under a different objective. The goal is not resolution. It is relief from internal pressure. Accuracy, context, and timing are casualties of that objective. The brain is no longer trying to solve the situation. It is trying to end the sensation that the situation is unsolvable. At the final stage, panic no longer acts as a response. It becomes the governing system. Decision-making, perception, and motor output stop coordinating and begin orbiting the same objective. Eliminate urgency as fast as possible. The brain is no longer weighing actions. It is executing. Momentum, each movement justifies the next. The system interprets continuity as progress, even when the outcome worsens. Stopping would require reopening evaluation. An evaluation has already been shut down. Physiological signals reinforce this lock. Elevated heart rate sustains arousal. Rapid breathing maintains tension. Muscle activation stays high. These signals are not correcting behavior. They are preventing interruption. The body is keeping itself in motion because motion delays the return of uncertainty cognitively. The collapse is complete. The brain cannot hold alternative outcomes long enough to compare them. Working memory is saturated. Error signals are overridden. Even obvious contradictions fail to register. The environment may change, but the internal model does not update. This is where panic consistently selects the wrong option. The choice is not wrong by logic. It is wrong by context. The brain has removed context to survive the moment. What remains is a single action optimized to feel urgent and decisive. Not accurate. The individual may later describe the decision as automatic, inevitable, or the only thing that made sense. That description is accurate. There was only one thing left to choose. Panic does not collapse intelligence. It collapses flexibility. The ability to pause, compare, and reverse is stripped away first. What looks like decisive action is actually a loss of degrees of freedom. The failure is not emotional. It is architectural. The brain under panic is not trying to solve the problem in front of it. It is trying to escape the state of needing to decide. That is why the option it picks feels urgent. That is why it feels right. And that is why it is usually wrong. Which option do you think disappears first?